A class is a blueprint for creating an objects. Objects can have properties and methods. So let's take an example of a car. If we have a class called car, it can have several different properties. So the properties can be the car model, the color of the car, number of wheels, size of the wheels, etc. Also, it can have several methods. Methods are where an object can perform certain actions. For example, a car can start, a car can stop, a car can reverse, a car can park. So these are few examples of methods. We can now create instances of this class. So car1 is an object that we have created, and it has a certain number of properties and method. So similarly, we can create car2 easily once we have declared our car class, and so on. So why is class is so important? Class is so important because once we declare our class, we can easily create an instances of class, or in other words, we can create different objects very easily, and this allows our code to be modular. In other words, we won't have to repeat ourselves more than necessary. Let's put this into practice now. So the first step is to create a class. The syntax for creating a class is we have to declare a access modifier. So this public allows this class to be accessed from different areas of the code. Then we have to use a keyword called class, followed by the class name. This class name must always be Pascal cased, which means that the first letter of the class name must always be capitalized. Now we need to create a property for our class, and we do this by typing in the following properties. So a model is one property and the color is another property. Again, we have to declare our access modifier. This public allows these properties to be accessed from different areas of the code. Then this is a data type. It's saying the property is a string data type, and this is the name of the property. And this get and set allows us to get this model and set a value which we are going to initialize at a later stage. The same thing applies to the color property. Next step is we'll have to create a method. Over here we have just created a very simple method. This is a access modifier which allows us to call this method from different areas of the code. Void means this method is not returning anything. Car start is the name of the method, and what we are doing with this method is we are just simply writing to the console car has started, and we are using a string literal property. This $sign allows us to directly access our model property, and this model property must be enclosed within the parenthesis, and the rest is a string. Now we have another method called car stop. Same principle applies. So we have also created another method called car stop, and the same syntax format and the same principle applies. Now we have created our class. Now we need to create a car object, and we cannot directly use this object called car. We will have to instantiate this class as an object before we can use this class, and to do this we have to follow the following syntax. We have to use the class name, so this is the class name, followed by the object name. This is a car with a small c. So this car and this car is different. This is the object name. Then we have to use the new keyword followed by the class name within the parenthesis. So that is the syntax for creating a car object. Now we will have to initialize our object. This is where we are setting the value of our object properties. So if we type in our object name followed by the dot notation followed by the property, then we can set the value. Similarly, over here we are setting the color as a red color. Finally, we can now call our object method. So this is calling in our car object method, car.start and car.stop. There is a separate way to create a car object and initialize its properties. So I will create another object called car2 and demonstrate this method. So what we can do is we can create this, whatever we have done over here, in a single line of code. Over here the syntax is the same, but instead of the small bracket parenthesis, we are using a curly braces, and we can directly call in the model and the color properties and assign it to them. So what this allows is this allows us to create the car object and initialize its object properties within the same snippet of code. This is another method of creating an object and initializing its properties. Now we are finally calling out our method for car2. Now if we run this piece of code, then it will say BMW car has started and BMW car has stopped, Mercedes car has started and Mercedes car has stopped. This is the car object and that is the car2 object. So far we have looked at two different ways of creating an object and initializing object properties. However, there is even more better method of creating objects. We can create objects efficiently using something called constructors. Let's look at this now. I can delete this, we don't need it, as we'll be using constructors to create our objects. First of all, we need to create a constructor. So constructor is nothing but a special method that can be used to create an object and initialize its properties. So the syntax for creating the constructor is we need to use an access modifier. Using the public allows us to pull this constructor from different parts of the code. This is the constructor name, which must be same as the class name. So in this example, car and car are the same, and this is absolutely critical in order to create a constructor. And we need to pass in parameters or arguments. In this example, we are passing in a string data type and our argument name is model. We are passing in a string data type and our argument name is a color. Then what we are doing is we are setting this argument name to the property. So what we are saying to the program is we are saying to the program whatever argument has been passed in, assign that argument value to the model property. So for this color it's the same, we are assigning the value of the argument that will be passed in to the color property. Once we do this, our job is done. We have created the constructor. Now we can use this constructor to create an object. So we can easily create an object in a single line of code. Here we are declaring our class name. This is our object name. We are passing in the new keyword, and we are passing in our class name, and this time around we can directly pass the values as model and color. So this will create an object car1 and set the model value as BMW and the car1's color properties value as red. Now let's review the properties that we have just created using the console white line commands. If we run this piece of code, then we will get BMW red. You can see the BMW car has started and BMW car has stopped. So using constructor, now we have created a car1 object. Let me put a console.writeLine just to make it more visible. It just adds a gap when we print our console. Now if I can, using the same exact method, I can create another object car2 and pass in different values. This time I passed in Mercedes and black. If we log all the values to the console and run the methods for car2, we will get this as an output. You can see our car2 value over here and our car1 object values over here. So constructor is much more efficient way of creating an object. So far we have talked about regular classes, and these are the most common type of classes that we will encounter in CSharp. And regular classes always needs to be instantiated, as shown over here. We always have to instantiate regular classes. However, there is also a static class, and we do not need to instantiate the static class. We can directly use this static class once it has been set up. We will go through an example. Let's delete this console write line statements as we don't need it. So let's create a static class. So a static class can be created by declaring the access modifier, which is public in this case, and static keyword must be used. So this means that the class is a static class. Then we have to use the class keyword, and then this is the class name, car info. As before, the first letter must be capitalized. Now we can create a static method inside the static class. So we have created a static method. So this is the public access identifier. We must use a static keyword. This is the data type, which is saying it must return an output of string type, and this is the name of the method. We have a red squiggly line because it's saying it does not return a value. It is expecting a string to be returned. We'll fix that in a moment. Then we are passing our argument as a car object model. So a car object can directly be passed into this static method, and we will be returning a car.model because this car, as you can see, car class has got a property called model. So we will be accessing that model, will be returning that model property once the car object has been passed in. Now we can go scroll up to the top. So we can use this static method inside a static class directly without instantiating it. So in order to do that, we need to call the class name. So this is the class name followed by a dot, and then this is the method inside that static class. So this is static method inside this static class, and we are passing in our argument as the object which we have already created over here. So let's see if we console log this, then what do we get? So we can see that when we pass in a car1 model to this car1 object, when we pass car1 object to the display car model, then we are being returned a BMW, which is the correct. So the model is the BMW, so that's why it shows BMW. In a similar fashion, we can display the car2 model without instantiating the static method inside the static class. Let's log it inside the console. You can see now it shows car2 model is Mercedes. So this is one way to use a static class. This is how we use a static class. It does not need to be instantiated, whereas the regular classes needs to be instantiated. We also have apart from the regular class, a static class, we also have an abstract class, a partial class, but the video will be a bit long to go through all of those. If you know the regular classes and the static classes, then you can carry out almost most of the activities that is required in CSharp.